Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 is a throwback to when games launched in a more complete state, but fun, action packed, no political bullshit, no DEI nonsense, straight, in your face, violent, third person shooter fun. I need to preface this by saying that while I am aware of the Warhammer franchise, I have never played any of the games, nor do I know anything about the IP itself, other than it's a board game where you grab figurines, paint your figurines, and fight somebody else. So I'm a total noob when it comes to Warhammer. I'm just aware of its existence. That being said, let's get right into the review. First and foremost, you may notice that Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 is a visual gem. This game is graphically amazing. My jaw dropped many times throughout, not just in terms of the level of detail, which is incredibly high in this game. Character models are very detailed, texture models really good, the scale of the environments, the amount of enemies on screen, everything about the game visually is on point and really gives you the sense that you're in a war as well as in a Warhammer war. On top of this, the immersion is really, really good. But this is all backed by a pretty solid optimization. The game for me on PC was pretty optimized. I ran the game mostly high to ultra settings, and I got a pretty solid 60 FPS majority of the way through, where the only time I experienced some sort of frame rate dip was towards the end of the game, where you had much more enemies on screen and things happening all at once. All of this is obviously backed by great audio design. The audio design, the guns sound really good, the effects are really good, the music is really good. The audio is really, really on point, and that is all aided as well by the great voice acting. The voice acting in Space Marine 2 is really good as well. Everything from a presentation point is on point, and when you play this game, you really feel like you're in a Warhammer world, which is really, really good. But how does the game actually play? Well, even though I played the game on PC, I primarily used a DualSense controller, and much to my surprise, Warhammer Space Marine 2 really utilizes the DualSense features really well. Every time you take a step with your character, it will vibrate based on which foot you're stepping on. So if it's your left foot, the left side of the controller will vibrate. If it's the right foot, the right side of the controller will vibrate. The haptic triggers are also used really, really well. The fact that they utilized the controller to this degree was very much a surprise for me, and very, very impressed with how well it was used. So if you are playing on PC, I recommend you do use a DualSense controller, and obviously PlayStation players, you'll get this benefit as well. But in terms of the actual mechanics, the gunplay in this game is really, really good. It's really, really tight, very similar to that of Gears of War. But if you haven't played or are unaware, as opposed to being a cover-based shooter like Gears of War, Warhammer 40k is more a melee focus. There's a lot of meleeing in the game. You can both dodge, you can block, you can parry. There's a lot of enemies that you have to actually read their movements to time the parry in order to counter with your own attack. So meleeing is a big part of this game, but it feels really good to hack and slash, but it also feels really good to shoot. So the controls are very tight, very responsive, and these are the kinds of things that you expect in a third-person shooter. In terms of the actual co-op experience, now if you didn't know, Warhammer has 3 distinct modes. It has the main campaign, which is highly recommended that you play through first. You have a co-op mode, and then you have your PvP. Now, the reason why you want to really play the campaign first is because the co-op missions are directly tied to the main narrative of the campaign. So if you do jump into co-op, you will kind of spoil the main story for yourself. Hence why it's recommended to play the campaign first. And you can play the campaign solo with AI companions, or you can play cooperatively with people on top of the designated PvE co-op mode itself, which is designated for it. And as for the experience is really, really good. As opposed to playing one singular character and one singular setup for the main campaign, when you're playing co-op, you actually have to choose a class. Whether you want to be a heavy class, a sniper class, a vanguard, there's 6 classes to choose from, each of which have their own speciality and loadouts. So when you play on co-op as well as PvP, there are different classes. And the overall mission structure of the co-op experience is really good. It's a lot of fun. Is it better than, say, Helldivers 2? Not quite, since Helldivers is a dedicated PvE game. But in terms of what's here for Space Marine, what's here is really good and a lot of fun because, again, you could run through both the campaign and the separate co-op mode with friends, and there's multiple difficulty settings for replayability. In terms of the PvP side of the game, now the PvP side of the game is what you would expect. You have 3 game modes, there's a few maps, and much like the co-op, you do share the same classes. So the Vanguard, the Sniper, 6 classes in total, each with their own skills. The one thing I do like about the game is that your progression between co-op and PvP goes back and forth. So if you're primarily a co-op player and you dabble in PvP or vice versa, progression is joined between both. So if you're leveling up a certain gun, you're leveling up a certain class, it applies for both the co-op and PvP. Now, the one thing I will say about Space Marine 2 that I was indifferent. Everything thus far has been praises, but this game is not perfect. And I'll start with the story. The main story of Warhammer is okay. Now, that could be my fault as well. As stated at the top of the video, I have no prior experience with the Warhammer franchise, so it may be advisable to either play previous games or watch a recap video of the story, and it will most likely enhance the story. But the overall story for here is just okay. What is good about the story is the characters themselves. The characters and the relationship between characters is absolutely good. Of course, this is accompanied by the great, amazing voice acting. So while the overarching story isn't the greatest, the characters are great. As for the negatives, the true negatives of Space Marine 2, in my opinion. Number 1 is the mission structure, even for the campaign. A lot of the mission structure is basically go here, flip a switch, defend this area, rinse and repeat. That's pretty much all you do throughout the entirety of the campaign. While the game is fun, while the campaign is a blast, it kind of lacked, in my opinion, those big epic moments that, like, for example, when Gears of War, you were able to get into a giant mech and pilot a giant mech, or in Gears 5, you were able to play as one of the aliens for a moment. It's things like that that the campaign for Space Marine is lacking. It's literally, the mission structure is the same. You go here, you flip a switch, defend this, protect that, rinse and repeat. Nothing very fancy about the mission structure. So the loop itself is the same throughout the entirety of the campaign. The other issue I will say, again, sticking with the campaign and a little bit of the co-op, is map exploration. So oftentimes while you're playing the campaign or you're going through co-op, you'll have a branching path where one path is the main path and then you can go around this corner over here to an eventual dead end. In a lot of games, when that's there, it's usually there's some sort of gift, a little gimme, a little hidden item, a little gem, something to help you along in your journey. In Space Marine, most of the time there is nothing. So you'll have a branching path. Oh, what's over here? Dead end. Oh, what's over here? Dead end. And there's nothing there. So it's quite unrewarding. So it's like you have these maps that are designed to have dead ends, but there's no point to having them there in the first place. You could have just closed it off and just made the linear path more linear, since the branching paths you have is so unrewarding. So those are like the main issues that I had with the game. But overall, this is a game that reminds me of back of the older days, where you bought a game, it had a main campaign, it had a multiplayer mode, and that was it. It wasn't, an in-game store trying to rip you off, a battle pass that requires money, etc., etc., etc. Yes, this game will be supported. Yes, they're adding more content. But all the significant content that will be added is part of the package price, and that the season pass that they have is more in line for cosmetics only. But all core gameplay will be added at the regular price of admission. So because of this, This is a real good complete product. If you're a Warhammer fan, you are absolutely going to love this game, no doubt about it. If you're not a Warhammer fan, if you're a fan of Gears, if you're a fan of the Gears franchise, this is a game that you should definitely take a look at. You'll probably enjoy it if you like Gears. There's a lot of good things here for any fan, regardless if you're Warhammer or not, but Warhammer fans will definitely dig it. While it's not perfect, I thoroughly enjoyed my time playing this game, and I think Warhammer 40k Space Marines is a fantastic title that shouldn't be missed. I'm giving Warhammer Space Marine 2 an 8.5 out of 10. This is Veteran Gamer, and I hope to see you guys next time.